What is up, everybody? This is Kundai, and today I am with Dr. Mupurwa. He's a political analyst. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. Today we are going to be discussing about the issue of the Zimbabwe National Dialogue. Sir, what do you think should be done considering the issue of the national dialogue in Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe got independence in 1980, and there were a lot of policies that were put into place. One of them was reconciliation as a policy. It didn't work out well. So because we saw that later on, after the reconciliation, there was a problem with that policy that led to probably land reform.
Yes.
And then we also adopted the indigenization policy that was going to award the local citizens 51%. That led also to another problematic issue. Now we have changed the presidency in the form of the old president, and now we have the new president. And we believe that when we change the presidium, which is one arm of the government, because we have three arms of government, very important arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So we have had reforms in probably the legislature and also the judiciary. And then one arm of the government that remained unchanged was the executive, where the presidium resides. And then so everybody participated in answering that question. Should we change the presidium? And that we did. Now we've got a new president in the presidium, which is one arm of the government. So in the national dialogue, having done that, we are trying now to bring everybody, civil society, churches, government, the legislature, judiciary, everybody should be participating in the national dialogue. Eventually, when we talk about the legislature, we are not including the political parties. Well, that's the only way we can accommodate them. But I see a trend where some people, they think that political parties should take the lead
in the
national dialogue.
Okay.
Then if now is the political party taking the lead in this discussion, is it now the national dialogue or it's a political issue?
Yeah.
So if we are going to involve everybody in the national dialogue, the political parties will be considered under the legislature. Well, that's one arm of the government. And we have the judiciary and the executive. So when we go now to the national dialogue, we have three arms of government. And where do you belong? For it to be a national dialogue. Of course, the president will call for the national dialogue because of his emergency powers and all the powers that he carries in his office. And then we expect the political parties to take heed of that call. And everybody must embrace it because it's the national dialogue. The moment you pull out for any other reason, then we want to investigate and interrogate your interests in the national dialogue.
In the national dialogue. So in other words, if someone pulls out of the national dialogue for whatever reason, it means...
you have the nation now interests at heart. Because once it's called the national dialogue, because by pulling out, probably you are protesting a process that could have given you a platform to say what you are protesting about. So it is not the right platform, it's not the right strategy for political parties to be pulling out of the national dialogue. Actually, they should be using that platform to say what they think should be done in the national dialogue.
To air out their views, and if they are having any problems.
That's my view on the national dialogue.
All right.
Everybody has to participate.
All right.
All views are welcome. If we become partisan and be starting to side with certain political views, then it ceases to be a national dialogue. Then that is the wrong platform to be airing your political view. Because not everybody belongs to a political party.
Yeah, so sir, who do you think is supposed to be involved when you're talking about the national dialogue, who is supposed to be involved?
We have in Zimbabwe, it's a multi-party democracy, Zimbabwe. And many people, if they be churches, NGOs, civil society, but they belong to a certain party of their choice. That is well reflected in the elections. So I might be a Christian as I am, but I belong to a political party. That is reflected democratically in an election. So let's go to the elections that were recently conducted in Zimbabwe. We found that ZANU-PF became the winner through a constitutional ruling. Because there was fierce objections from the opposition, which put almost half of the electorate. So if we are going to be very balanced in this national dialogue, of which it has to
be balanced.
We cannot proceed without that component of the people who voted for the opposition. You can have the churches, but they belong to a political party, the churches. A church is not a political party.
That's true.
You can have civil society, it's not a political party. So when you go to elections, we focus on the political process. So if the MDC pulled that much, and they're not in the national dialogue, we might still be struggling to come out with a national dialogue.
Yeah, that's very true, because they got over 2 million votes. So if you are saying in the national dialogue they are not involved, it means we've got over 2 million people represented. So yeah, it's a very big challenge. Considering the fact that we are, like, if we talk about the national dialogue, like what we have discussed earlier on, we will be talking also in context with ZANU-PF and MDC, right? So how do you think the national dialogue is supposed to be conducted?
We have obviously interest here from both parties. ZANU-PF has got interests, MDC has got interests. And so it would be very proper to have a neutral venue with a person who is not from either party conducting the national dialogue. In this case, we don't want any party to look like or to seem like they are leading the national dialogue.
National dialogue, yeah, that's true.
For it to be national dialogue. So we need to have a neutral person, neutral venue, and let's not take conditions from any of those parties. Because ZANU-PF will come with conditions, MDC will come with their own conditions. And so those conditions, I see them not meeting anyway.
Yeah, that's very true.
So proper is somebody who can come now and then chair the national dialogue. Somebody who is neutral. A proper neutral venue with a neutral referee.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
You see, so when we do that, it becomes national, because now we are going to involve people who maybe never voted also. But they are now in the national dialogue. That has to be very clear coming from the leaders of both parties, that now we need a national dialogue. If ZANU-PF thinks they need a national dialogue and MDC thinks we don't need a national dialogue, so we might never have a national dialogue. And one area that I'm now concerned about is, what does then the national dialogue produce? What is it going to give us ultimately at the end? Because that will then raise the question of legitimacy. Which ZANU-PF will contest. That it will never be solved through a national dialogue. It will only be solved through an election.
Yeah, that's very true. Because
so if you are going to have a national dialogue, what are you trying to achieve? Because the issue of legitimacy was dealt with in the national elections, and then through the Constitutional Court.
In the Constitutional Court.
So I want to be humble here and say, if we are going to have the national dialogue, what is the agenda? The agenda is probably having a national vision.
As a country.
As a country.
nation.
What is the national vision?
Yes.
because we need to approach this from an angle that then would then help us to access certain areas, especially the international community. We know we have sanctions there from America.
Yes.
They probably could be receiving information from the opposition. That's why they are still introducing sanctions.
Yeah, that's very
But
true.
if we have out of the national dialogue a national vision,
Representing our own interests as a nation. Yeah.
then out of the national dialogue, we can then approach the powers that be. In this case, the international community,
Yes.
the United Nations, the AU,
Yes.
SADC, so that we put pressure on those countries that have imposed sanctions on us to remove them. From a national vision perspective, it comes from the national dialogue.
From the national dialogue, yeah, that's very true. Yeah, so thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. So we'll see you again in the next video.
You are very welcome.
We'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, welcome.